Hey guys, Davey here. Before we dive into this conversation, I just want to let everyone know that Nothing is Wasted is coming to Indianapolis, which is such a weird thing to say because we're stationed here. We're headquartered here in Indianapolis. But what I mean by that is we're hosting the Healing Leader Roundtable for the first time in Indianapolis this March 6th. Now, the Healing Leader Roundtable is a one-day event for pastors, ministry leaders, lay leaders, counselors, therapists, nonprofit leaders, where we dive deeper into how to create environments where people can heal, environments that are biblically centered, spirit-filled, and trauma-informed. We think all three of those components are critical. You see, we found ourselves at a critical time in church history. Anxiety, depression, mental unhealth, it's at an all-time high. And unaddressed pain and trauma has the potential to paralyze the Big C church and its leaders more than anything else. And I'm telling you, we see it all over. As we're working with churches, as we're working with ministry leaders, the enemy is doing everything he can to leverage pain and trauma against the church. I mean, how many times have you seen people in your congregation or organization begin to get on mission and move into their purpose, and then something happens in their life, it knocks them off course? We'd love to invite you, if you're a pastor, a ministry leader, counselor, nonprofit leader, and your entire team, to a one-day roundtable event designed to equip you with a holistic approach to healing your organization, all the way from the leadership to the lay people. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the pressing needs in your congregation or the emotional toll that it takes on you personally, we'd love to have you join us for this special event. You can find out more information and register at nothingiswasted.com/roundtable. Again, nothingiswasted.com/roundtable. But jump on this quick because there's an early bird rate that ends in the middle of February. nothingiswasted.com/roundtable. Now, if you're not a ministry leader, I know we've got a lot of you guys podcast listeners here in Indianapolis. If you're not a ministry leader, but you would love your leadership to know about this, we'd love your help getting the information about this event to your pastor, to your church leadership, to your ministry leadership. Spread the word that Nothing is Wasted Ministries is bringing the Healing Leader Roundtable to Indianapolis March 6th. They can get more information at nothingiswasted.com/roundtable. We'll put the link right in the show notes. Now, don't delay. This is a special one-day event, and they often reach capacity. We've done these all over the country, and they usually sell out. So make sure you get this information to your pastor quickly, or if you're a pastor, make sure you jump on this before the early bird rate expires. Would love to see you, your church leadership, at this event so we can talk deeper into how to create environments inside the church where people can heal and get back on mission. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Nothing is Wasted podcast. My name is Davey. I'm one of your hosts, and I am so excited that you're joining us here this week on the Nothing is Wasted podcast. We have a really special conversation for you. They're always special. They're always amazing. This one, we've been holding this one in the bank for a while. I recorded this a while ago, but I'm so excited for you to finally listen to it or watch this if you're watching this on YouTube. By the way, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you can go subscribe to our YouTube channel. And some of you guys like to watch podcasts. You like to see our faces. You can actually watch these conversations now on YouTube. We've got it's amazing. The subscribership over there is really growing tremendously. And so it tells me there's a lot of people who like to watch podcasts. I personally listen to podcasts mostly in the car. It probably can give you a handful of like actual episodes that I've actually watched on YouTube, but nonetheless, and you guys like to. So I'm so excited that we're there on YouTube. And so you can go over to our Nothing is Wasted Ministries YouTube channel and you can subscribe there if that's what you want to do. Today's conversation with Craig Cooper is an incredible conversation. Craig Cooper is a USA Today best-selling author and keynote speaker. He co-wrote the book Glad You're Here with Grammy-nominated country singer and songwriter Walker Hayes. And so if any of you are Walker Hayes fans, you'll probably be familiar with the song Craig, and that song was written about Craig Cooper. And it's all about the relationship, the friendship that they have that was just a very unlikely friendship. And in fact, that's the name of Craig's book, Glad You're Here, Two Unlikely Friends, Breaking Bread, and Fences, which I love the name of that, the title of that, Breaking Bread and Fences, implying that they're breaking bread and they're breaking fences. They're tearing fences down. They're finding commonalities, even if there's not a whole lot of commonalities. But Craig Cooper was one of the founding pastors of Redeeming Grace Church in Franklin, Tennessee, which is, as you'll hear the story, which is where a lot of this began to take place as Walker Hayes was going through a difficult time in his recording artist career and performing artist career. And so this is just a fascinating story. And it's an amazing story about hospitality. It's an amazing story about pain. It's an amazing story about suffering, being there for other people when you're suffering. So many of you guys are asking us questions. How do I show up for my friend or my family members when they're going through something? It's a very difficult thing. It's awkward. We don't know what to say. So we try to fill in the space and the silence. And we just often forget about the importance and the power of presence. And that's what I love about what we talk about here with Craig Cooper and what he talks about in his book is just how powerful presence and hospitality is, and the seeds that it plants and the impact that it has in the long run that you never would ever think. But it's the small things. It's starting in the small ways. And so this is a powerful conversation. Before we dive into it, I want to just mention that if you're new to the Nothing is Wasted podcast, or if maybe this is your first time to listen, or you've been around for a while but you haven't taken this step, I want to invite you to take either a first step or a next step in your healing journey by joining me for a live Zoom call that I do every month called 5 Steps to Taking Back Your Story, no matter what you've gone through. And in this Zoom call, it is live. It's not a webinar, so you can put your video on. I do about an hour of teaching, a little less than an hour of teaching. And then we have about 30 minutes of Q&A. But what I do is I walk through my own healing journey after losing my wife, Amanda, and our unborn baby, Evie, in 2015 when they were murdered in our home in a home invasion. And I walk through how God brought me through that and the 5 big questions that I had to ask that were really essentially 5 steps to walking through that healing journey. And I get it. Listen, grieving, healing is not a linear thing whatsoever. And that's not what I'm presenting here, that it's linear. It's actually very cyclical. But I am talking about 5 questions that I think that you have to approach if you're going to not just get stuck in your pain, if you're not going to just survive through it, but if you're going to actually learn how to thrive. And if you're going to partner with God to take back your story, no matter what you've gone through. And so that's why this is called 5 Steps to Taking Back Your Story, no matter what you've gone through. You can join us for our next one. Register at nothingiswasted.com/start here, nothingiswasted.com/start here, or click the link in the show notes or right underneath this YouTube video. All right, let's go ahead and dive into my conversation with Craig Cooper. Well, Craig Cooper, it's so great to have you joining me on the Nothing is Wasted podcast. Thanks for being here.
I'm so happy to be here, Davey. It's great to meet you. I know your story, blown away by what God's done, and I'm really grateful. I'm honored. It's a privilege for me to hang with you today.
Well, thank you, man. And I'm learning more of your story as we're talking. We talked a little bit off air, and it's just really cool to see how God has sent our journeys in a kind of a parallel place. And I'm excited for our community to hear more about your story and the things that you're doing right now out of your story. It really is an incredible thing when I dive back and I look at what you've gone through and what you've helped walk other people through. So this is going to be a really unique conversation. Before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about you. Just who is Craig Cooper? What's your family like? Where do you guys live? Give us a little context and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, so I am a Tennessee native. In fact, right above me it says I was born here and raised here, and I'll make my grave here. It's home. This is Drew Holcomb and the neighbors, Tennessee. So I'm actually from East Tennessee. Grew up in Chattanooga, went to school, a place called Ooltewah High School, and then moved to.
I know Ooltewah
You know
really
Ooltewah?
well. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
Do you
my
really?
gosh. Just straight from high school baseball. We played a tournament in Ooltewah on a travel team. I grew up in Alabama, and so we came up to Ooltewah, and I just had never heard of it before, and I'm was struck by the name, and so it's seared into my memory.
Yeah, people pronounce it wrong all the time. They say Ultiwa, Ultu, it's an Indian name. And but yeah, Ooltewah, Ooltewah.
That's cool.
And, yeah, so I went to school there through high school, and then actually I was 18 years in Chattanooga, and then moved with an identical twin brother. I've got an identical twin brother, and his name is Stuart, and we both moved and roomed together at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and a campus ministry through an outreach there. That's where I heard the gospel. And as an 18-year-old college freshman, the 3 biggest introductions in my life happened through that campus ministry. I was introduced to Jesus.
Mm.
and I was introduced to the local church and a ministry there that I ended up going into ministry and being a part of. And then I was introduced to my wife, Laura. And so
Wow.
we got married. We stayed in Knoxville. All told, I was there for about 18 years. And then we moved over here to the Nashville area to help plant a church called Redeeming Grace. And that was in 2012. We moved here. 2013, we launched it. And so we have four kids, and they're 21, 18, 16, and almost 13. And we've
Mm.
just been making our home here in Middle Tennessee, and it's been wonderful. We love it here.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I am somewhat jealous because that area of Tennessee, kind of Franklin, Middle Tennessee area is just one, it's booming.
It
Two,
is.
it's gorgeous. Every time I drive
It is.
through or
Yep.
drive around that area, I'm like, oh, because in Indiana we were just like flatlands, but I miss the rolling hills. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and so it just starts. I'm like, oh, I'm starting to feel like it's
Yep.
more like home when I roll through there, and so it's really really cool that you guys make your home there. You've got a really interesting and unique story in how God has used friendship specifically and hospitality to impact not only you but someone else, your neighbor at the time, Walker Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that because it is just fascinating what
Yeah.
what happened in all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it blows me away. Honestly, it's when I step back and Laura and I look at our lives, we're like, what is happening? It feels like a movie, and
Mm,
truthfully, but yeah, when we moved over here to the Nashville area, I was a church planting pastor, one of the three founding pastors of Redeeming Grace, and Walker Walker Hayes, who if people are listening and don't know who that is, he wrote the song Fancy Like, so like,
mhm.
yeah, we fancy like Applebee's on a date night. You don't want me singing it, but or dancing it. But that they went crazy. And so he's really well known for that country music singer, songwriter. When we met, he was an atheist and I was a church planting pastor, and he didn't want to have anything to do with Jesus, and I was living for Jesus. He didn't want to have anything to do with the church, and I was planting a church. And so you would have never put the two of us together on paper to be friends, but we became the best of friends, like
Mm,
best friends. And we ended up, going to each other's kids' games every week,
mm.
and spending multiple nights in each other's homes, back and forth for dinners. They at one point gave us one of their dogs because they had they had to. They're like, this one drives us crazy. Y'all seem to love Tulip. Why don't you take our dog? And
Yep.
we would trade back and forth. Anytime we would travel, we would drop Tulip off with them with Noli, and they would drop Noli off anytime they traveled with Tulip. And so we had sister dogs. We had our kids are best friends. My wife had invited Lainey, Walker's wife, to church on a Saturday night. We met on Saturday night out in the boonies in South Franklin. At that time, it wasn't really built up, down here, and so there's a lot of hurdles to come. There's like 30 people coming, and they had said they were going to come, and some people say that, and you don't know how it's
Right.
going to go, but
Oh yeah.
but we had
I've
met them
planted
at
a
a
church before.
basketball.
I definitely understand that.
Yeah. So they walk in the door, and Walker says the first thing I said to him was, "Glad you're here." Like I said, "Glad you're here," but he said he felt it, and he says he reeked of alcohol at that time. He was an alcoholic. He's 8 years sober now, but he would hold his youngest, Loxley at the time, in the back, and not really engage as much in church. But then we would do stuff afterwards. We'd play Foursquare. We would hang with the kids. Then we would always go out to eat after church. Like, have y'all eaten? No, we would end up at La Hacienda, a little Mexican restaurant, and that's it. That ended up becoming our rhythm. Like every Saturday night, we would do church. We would hang together, and then he started playing for Puckett's Boathouse, Walker Wednesday nights as a singer songwriter.
Mm.
He had come to Nashville. He lost a record deal, and there was he was just playing, at Puckett's and things like that, and there was a time where, you know, they lost the van that was sponsored because he
Mm.
had a record deal, and we let him borrow our van when we went out of town with Laura's family, and we came back, and I didn't want to take it back, so we started praying, just saying, Lord, please help us to be able to give them that van. And
Mm.
I was working as a bivocational pastor, so I was serving as one of the pastors, but I was also working in a sales role and in a staffing and IT company. Closed the deal and had enough to get us a used vehicle, and we replaced our family van, and then we went and drove over to the baseball field. We knew they had a game that night, and I came with the keys and the title and a pen in my hand, and he did the math on it because Lara was there in another vehicle and I was there, and we hadn't come to the game. It was Baylor's game, his son, and afterwards he's like, "What are you doing here?" He gave me a big hug, and then he starts looking like, "What are you doing here?" And then I just handed him the title and said, "Dude, all you got to do is sign, and it's yours."
Wow.
We did that in
Wow.
secret, didn't share it with anybody. Told our family we weren't going to share it with anybody, and we had a bit of an argument. Honestly, he was like, "No, no, no way, I'm not taking your car." And Leela, his daughter, finally goes, "Dad, just take the car." and and he reluctantly took it, and they drove home. And I remember driving back, Davey, and I was like, "Man, I hope I didn't offend him."
Mm.
And because it was very awkward, for a moment there. And then later, Walker just would, anytime we were together, he felt like he hadn't adequately thanked me, and he would go, "Dude, you gave me your van, like you gave
Mm.
me your car," and he ended up writing a song about it, and
Mm.
the song is called Craig, and
Mm.
that song was written as an atheist, which is crazy to me.
Wow.
But the whole thing is about our friendship and my relationship with Jesus. So the chorus is like, he may not, he can't walk on water or turn at Napa Valley red, but he just might be tight with the man that did, which
Mm.
was the first like inkling that he was
Yeah.
curious about
Yeah.
Christ and the claims of Christ. And God used that to really soften his heart in some way. And then later they lost a child, their seventh child, Oakley. I officiated the funeral, held Oakley in my arms in the hospital. We wept with them, we grieved with them. It affects me right now. Um,
Wow.
and and then the Lord just kind of really sweetly
Mm.
drew Walker to himself, and he ended up professing faith in Christ. And we were at a sushi restaurant, and he's like, "Dude, I got something to tell you." I'm like,
Wow.
"What?" And he said, "I believe." I'm like, "What do you mean you believe? You believe what?" He said, "All of it." I said, "Walker, you telling me you believe Jesus is the Son of God and that you want to live
Wow.
your life for his glory?" And he said, "That's exactly what I'm saying, bro." And I just got up and gave him the hugest hug ever.
Wow.
And after that, he is they moved in next door. We ripped the fence out between our two backyards. We did life together during COVID. We ended up writing a book together called Glad You're Here, Two Unlikely Friends Breaking Bread and Fences. And then we were working on chapter 5 when he wrote Fancy Like. And
Hmm.
his career just went nuts.
Skyrocketed. Wow.
And now he's telling people, he shares his testimony in every concert. He's telling people about Jesus. And he shares
Wow.
our story, and he sings the song correct. Can you believe that? It's
It's mind blowing. It's
it
mind
is
blowing.
mind blowing. Yeah, we actually are tattooed right here because this is
Oh
where
my
my
gosh.
mind. So you can see, it says Isaiah 42:8, but it's in Kenya, Rwanda, because we've been to Africa, Rwanda together twice. But
Wow.
this is what I quote every time he sings that song: is "I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory I give to no other." And
Mm.
I love it. Like, I'm the Lord, that's my name. My glory I give to no other. So I just think, Davy, for every grain of glory, every ounce of praise for anything good that's happened in our lives belongs
Wow.
exclusively to Jesus. And so
Come on.
I have it tattooed on my left wrist, and he has it tattooed on his right wrist. And we're just telling the world about Jesus.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Gosh. There's so many things like I want to pull out of what you were talking about. But the first thing is this. I want to try to bring perspective, I think, in a world right now where we see a lot of the crossover between celebrity and Christian culture. You
Mm,
often can see from the outside looking in, you can see and smell certain. I mean, I'm rolling in pastor circles all the time, so you can see the like desire or temptation for pastors or ministry leaders to cozy up with celebrities because it may be a mutually beneficial thing. And so I want to strip all that away and remind people as you're listening to this, that's not what happened here, because this was you being Jesus to somebody who was a struggling artist, which there are plenty of those
mm,
in Nashville. And you're you're over here having this, and I relate with this church planter mentality that says that is this, and I miss this mentality. I miss this, Craig, because
mm,
it's the mentality that's crazy enough to believe that everybody you come in contact with is a story in progress, that Jesus, you believe that because you came in contact with them, Jesus is already drawing their heart to him. And there's
yeah.
something about that that gets wired into you as a church planter that now that I'm not a church planter, I have lots of conversations with believers. I am convicted by that, and I miss that because I go, I used to have a mindset of an evangelist, because it shouldn't just be the mindset of a church
Mm,
planter, it should be the mindset of every believer
yeah.
that
Yeah.
says, I'm eyes up for the divine appointments that God has put around me, no matter who it is,
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
go, what part do I play in their story to bring them to Christ? And to have the faith to believe that, crazy enough, like, you know what, this person's going to come to know Christ, and I'm just going to love them and walk with them and
Mm.
be a brother to them. How much of that, talk a little bit about just kind of that mindset, just the, because that's really what we're talking. We're going to get into some of this, community and friendship and neighboring and all that kind of stuff. But like, it starts first with a heart and a mindset.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. I is when we moved to help plant the church, this is 2012, and the church launched in 2013. I mean, I think I was just full of zeal and really excited about seeing God do amazing things and what he was going to do, everything. You fast forward 5 years in, and I was so discouraged.
Yeah.
I remember walking downtown Franklin and saying, Lord, where are all the conversions?
Mm,
Where are all the, lives that have been transformed? Do you have me where you want me? And I even prayed. I said, Lord, I try to encourage other people. Um, I really need you to encourage me. Do you have me where you want me? And that I had just come back from a youth ministry retreat that weekend. That night after that prayer, Laura and I are on a date, and we were in our car sitting in Cool Springs, debating on whether or not to go into a movie because I was just so discouraged. We'd eaten
mm.
Chipotle, and we for our day, and I'm trying to tell her how discouraged I was, and her phone buzzes, and I remember looking at her going, "Babe, who's that?" And I was a little bit like irritated that she was checking her phone while I was trying to tell her, share my heart, And she said it's Lainey. This is Walker's wife. And I was like, "Can you tell Lane that we're on a date?" And um she said, "Well, it's got an MP3 on it, and it has your name on it.
Mm.
I think we need to play it." And that was when I first heard the song,
Wow.
Craig. Yeah. So, I mean, s-
Wow.
so I would say for me, Davey, I came in going just full of faith. God's going to
Right.
save so many people. This is this,
Right.
that, that. And we had 5 very quiet years. um, of just, you know, meals and dinners and conversations and this and that and that, um, before that even hit. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I just for anybody who would feel discouraged,
Yeah.
I understand that feeling. And God is doing so many things that we can't see behind the scenes. And the kingdom of God is like a man who sows, and then he goes and he sleeps, and then it
Wow.
appears like day, by itself. This it just starts springing up, and then there's this beautiful fruit that you start to see, that you couldn't see. And so I yeah, I love that. And I would also say to you, you are doing the work of an evangelist, and you continue. I mean, even in talking with you, you're taking people from pain to purpose,
Mm.
and everybody
Yeah.
experiences pain in this broken world. Everybody
Yeah.
experiences just heartbreak,
Mm.
and you're wrapping your arm around them with your story and with the hope of the gospel and the risen savior, the empty tomb, and telling people that there's hope. And so
Yeah.
I think God has just broadened your church planting heart
Mm.
to equip the church in full capital C.
Mm.
So I'm
Wow.
inspired by you, Davey. I think that you haven't lost that heart at all.
Yeah.
That heart is there. It's being used in ways that are equipping other people to do what you've done. So
Wow.
thank you.
Oh man, thank you for that encouragement. That means the world to me. And I tell our team that all the time, Craig. I say, hey, we're not a pain and trauma ministry. We're an evangelism and discipleship ministry. We just happen to
Woo!
be
Come
intercepting
on.
people in the darkest time of their life, which is when they're the most ready and
It
willing
is. It
to
is. Yeah.
hear. And
100%.
hey, everyone, it's your Nothing is Wasted podcast host, Davey Blackburn here. And I want to share with you one of the many resources that we have for you in your pain to purpose journey. One of the things we hear a lot from listeners like you is the ways in which the place that should be offering hope and healing for you is actually added to your pain. Not in all cases, but in many cases, especially recently, I've heard this a lot. The church is God's redemption plan, and yet, because of the imperfection of the people inside of churches all over the world, so many people are walking away from church wounded from what we're calling church hurt or spiritual abuse. And that's why we want to introduce to you our latest masterclass that we just released called When People Fail, Finding a Way Through Church Hurt. On this masterclass, my friend, author, and speaker Natalie Runyon will help you through the pain of church hurt. With practical wisdom and heartfelt understanding, you'll be encouraged in your own experience with church hurt. You can go purchase this class a la carte by going nothingiswasted.com/masterclass, or better yet, I want to encourage you to join our Community Plus membership. And for just $20 a month, which is, by the way, a tax-deductible donation to Nothing is Wasted Ministries. So if you sign up for Community Plus, we send you a statement at the end of the year. For just $20 a month, you'll have access to this masterclass and all of our content in our growing content library. So all of the other masterclasses that we've ever done, all of our mini courses, all of our bonus episodes, all of our on-demand events, everything. Nothingiswasted.com/community plus is where you can find out more information and sign up today for Community Plus. And I want to encourage you, go through this masterclass, When People Fail, Finding a Way Through Church Hurt. Because here's the reality, people can fail us, and they probably will. And churches can disappoint us, and they probably will. No matter what, God will remind us that when we bring him our pain, nothing is wasted. Pick up this masterclass from my friend Natalie Runyon, When People Fail, Finding a Way Through Church Hurt. Maybe talk a little bit about that. I mean, you walked with Walker through the loss of a child. I'd
Yeah.
love for you to share a little bit about just how pivotal it is to be community around people, to be someone who is walking with, so, one of the things we say a lot is that safe community is not someone that just shows up and tells you it's going to be okay. They say, I'm going to walk with you until you can say it's going to be okay.
Oh, I love
And
that.
that's, I feel like, what, I'm seeing in you, and as you're walking with Walker and other people, you can just tell it comes out of you. You're very encouraging. You're one that walks with people. Why do you think that's so important, especially when tragedy or something up in someone's life, to walk with somebody in that?
Yeah, they don't feel alone. I think people have a tendency, we all have a tendency to feel like we're the only ones who've ever struggled with X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And I think that's a lie from the enemy. I think that it's not true. No temptation has overtaken us. It's not common to man, and God is faithful. He won't let us be tempted beyond what we can bear, but with the temptation, provide a way of escape. And Jesus is able to sympathize with us and all of our weakness. He was tempted in every way,
Right.
just as we are, yet without sin. The interesting thing for us, Davey, was Walker and I immediately connected on our brokenness. Like I'm
Mm.
talking, first few conversations, that's what drew me to him, was his willingness to be vulnerable and his willingness to say, yeah, dude, I got dropped from my first record deal with Capitol Record. We came over here with this huge dreams and aspirations and desires, and I got dropped. And I had gotten fired from my first pastoral
Mm.
ministry role. So that was one of the most painful things that I had ever walked through. What happened for me was, and I share about it and glad you're here, but what happened for me was, I came to faith in Christ as an 18-year-old college freshman, through this campus ministry. And then I graduated in 3 years, and they invited me to go to a pastor's college and then come back and lead that campus ministry and serve as the second pastor in a smaller but growing church. We probably had 200 something people. It grew up to about 1,000. And I came in with so much zeal that I packed the calendar so full. Monday nights, I was leading worship team practices. Tuesday night, I would lead a Bible study on campus. Wednesday night, I would lead a small group in our home. Thursday night, I would preach at the campus ministry where I had heard the gospel. Friday night, I would do some sort of social event with the students, and then Saturday night we were preparing for all the responsibilities for Sunday. And then Sunday I would do like the new members classes. I would lead worship. I would do the church, all the everything outside of preaching, except for the times when the lead pastor wasn't preaching and I would preach. And then come home, take a monster nap, and then try to take my wife out on a lovely date on Sunday night, completely
While
spent.
you're
So
zonked.
yeah, so think about how that,
Oh
I
my
mean, what is
gosh.
that? That's a recipe for disaster. And I didn't
Yeah.
know that. I did that for 2.5 years, and I completely burned out. And the church ended up saying, "Hey, we're gonna let you go. We think you need to just go get some experience in the business
Mm.
world and stuff." And I was
Wow.
completely brokenhearted, and stayed in the same church. I was offered several different positions in other places, decided to stay in the same church that had fired me. And
Mm.
you talk about humbling. Um, God broke my heart, and I think He had to break my heart to give me a tender heart for the broken. And He just used that, where I Sundays were, they were hard, where I would go and just pour my heart out to God in long walks and say, what is happening? Why'd you let this happen? And during that whole time, in the 5 years, I got staffing experience and technology experience. And here's what's
Yeah.
crazy: 5 years later, Davey, the church came back and said, hey, we wish we had never let you go, and feel like you are called to ministry. Would you consider coming back on
Mhm.
on staff in order to help plant a
Wow.
church? So I did that, and God redeemed it. And then when we moved here to
Wow.
Nashville, the job I got as a bivocational pastor that was in staffing and technology with a technology staffing
Of
company.
course.
And and it was like
Wow.
God just I could not have gotten that role to help
Yeah.
plant the church if I had not been released from the ministry role. So in about
Wow.
a weekend's time, the Lord just said, "Hey, I'm all over this, and I got you." And He gave me a big
Wow.
hug. But when Walker and I connected, we connected on, him getting let go from his dream and me getting let
Mm.
go from my dream. And then I just felt like I can be honest with this guy. I don't
Yeah.
have to, I can just tell him everything. And,
Which is
man,
refreshing for a pastor, right?
oh
Because there's
yeah,
not a whole lot of
100.
spaces you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. He literally became my best friend. Like
Wow.
there wasn't anything we would keep from him. And, what was crazy is I was praying, Lord, please, I want to be able to have fellowship with him
Yeah. Yeah.
in Christ. Please draw him near and save him. Do whatever it is you need to do. And anytime he would give hints, like he said one point, I would believe we were standing in the kitchen, and he said, "I'd believe there's a God if I could quit drinking." And so Laura and I said, "Okay, we're gonna pray. Lord, please take the desire for alcohol away from Walker."
Wow.
We did that privately. We didn't
Uh-huh.
tell him we were doing
Yeah.
that.
Right.
He wakes up on a Saturday morning one day and doesn't reach for drink, does and said he was done. And
Wow.
he didn't do that out of faith. He didn't do that out of
Oh.
that was a complete answer to prayer. And then, a couple years later, I reminded him of that, like, hey, remember when you said that? And
Wow.
it just, but God, man, God just did amazing things. But we connected on our brokenness. And I think that vulnerability has really helped us stay uh, strong. And yeah, and God just used it
Wow.
in very redemptive ways. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Man. Well, a couple of things. I love the fact that like prayer was such a foundational and pivotal part of that. I think sometimes we can one feel the pressure to have to say the right things or in the right, you know, with the right kind of cadence, and it's like you're put so much pressure on yourself as an evangelist to go, how
yeah,
do I? And you're like, it's really the job of the Holy Spirit to draw the person's heart. He's the one that
100%.
saves anyways. So I love that. I love this as you're framing out what God has done in your story. I think about Joseph, right? Like the biblical character Joseph,
Mm.
going, why did I wind up in this prison? But then you see the tools that he was over the rations for the prisoners. He
Yeah.
was put in
Ooh,
charge of that.
I
And
never
then,
thought about that.
and
I
then it
never thought
propels
about
him.
that.
I mean, he's doing this to steward in this low places where he could have
Wow.
just been extremely bitter at the Lord, but instead scripture says he applied himself and the Lord gave him favor. So
Yeah.
then he's put over the rations, and it prepared him to be put over the rations for the entire world, essentially, at least the known ancient world at the time. And I, see the
That's
same thing a little
amazing.
bit in your thread, right? Where it's like this divine journey that God has you on, where you could have just thrown your hands up and been so mad at God, but you're going, okay, well, I'm as disappointed as I am. I'm going to wrestle with the Lord. I'm going to grapple with him. And then I'm going to learn these skills, not knowing that God was going to bring that back into your story.
Wow.
And,
That's amazing. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's so encouraging because I mean, I think often of Joseph's story, but I've never thought of the skills
yeah.
that he learned in the way that you just described that. And it really is, it's remarkable. So
Mm.
God uses he uses our brokenness and Second Corinthians 1 with the comfort that we've received,
Right.
we're able to comfort others. And
Right.
um, he's the God of all comfort, the Father of mercies and God
Mm.
of all comfort. Yeah.
Mm. You,
So
you
that's
you
good.
alluded to this idea of like God was humbling you, breaking you through this process, and prior to that, you came with a lot of zeal.
Yeah.
I'm curious how your zeal continued through that breaking process, because sometimes people lose their zeal in the breaking process. It doesn't seem like that's been the case. Can you talk about maybe the intersection of those two things?
Mm.
How you felt maybe the zeal shifted or changed or based on the breaking, the humbling that God was taking you through?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of tear-stained journals,
Mm,
that where the Lord in his kindness, he years and years and years ago kind of helped me get a track on reading through the scriptures on a yearly basis, and one that is just um, that has served me over the years. And someone led me through that whole process. And so what I think during the time in those low times, what's so helpful is that's all through the Bible. I mean, it is everywhere. You just talked about it with Joseph. I mean, you read the Psalms,
yeah.
um, and it is just there's all kinds of landscapes that God takes us through.
Mm,
But I mean, you see godly men and women, you know, and people who love the Lord going through valleys and going through deserts and going through storms and going through moments of deep desperation, and then the Lord coming and meeting them there. And so really through just the regular reading of
mm,
scripture, it started opening up in ways that I just needed. I mean, I really needed it. I mean, this morning I read, better is a little with the fear of the Lord
mm,
than, I wrote it down. Let's see,
mm,
better, the cheerful of heart has a continual feast. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it. Better is a
mm.
dinner of herbs, where love is, than, fattened ox and hatred. And
Wow.
the Lord used that for me this morning just to encourage me. We're doing a few things where we're simplifying and we're kind of changing things and minimalizing in some ways. And the Lord used that verse this morning to encourage me. Hey, uh, better with a little in the fear of the Lord and
Mm,
love than have a lot and strife and hatred and
mm.
all that. So I think
Wow.
the zeal, I will say that, I was sharing with a counselor, a therapist guy, and I said, I feel like I have some uh, chinks in the armor. I've got some damage to the shields.
Mm,
And you know what he said to me, Davey?
mm,
He let me listen, and then he said, Craig, you have shields.
mm,
It's like, whoa, thank you for that. Because I
mm,
said, I feel like the armor's been damaged, and he was like, well, you have armor,
mm.
and um, God has protected us, and I think He's led us in and through moments of deep discouragement and
Wow.
trouble and hardship and pain, and those have been moments where, yeah, it does it affect it does it's affected me. I would say I have had moments of burnout and moments of I had a 4-year period of darkness,
Yeah.
and it coincided with, which is crazy, with the launch of redeeming, or what, not redeeming grace, with the launch of Glad You're
Glad you're
Here
here.
in the book.
Wow.
And yeah, it
Wow.
coincided with that. So in
I
some ways,
find
as the
I
Lord
that's
was
so funny that
blessing. Yeah.
I find that to be consistent. It
Yeah.
almost seems like a pattern. I'd hear that what you're
It's
saying
amazing.
from so many people that kind of the hockey stick effect of their life externally seems to coincide with this like depression or dark night of the soul on the
Yep.
inside.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
haven't been able to
Yeah.
figure out, I don't know if you have a theory. Do you have a theory about, I mean, I haven't been able to figure out, like, we keep kind of wrestling with that idea of like, why, I wonder why that is.
I don't know fully. God moves in mysterious ways, His wonders to perform.
Yeah.
But I will say, for me, He has kept me low, as He's kept me low internally, as he has elevated my influence externally. It's really,
Mm.
it's, I'm thankful for that
Maybe a
because,
weird kind of grace in some
yeah,
level, right?
I'm really grateful
Yeah.
because people can be
Huh.
saying, dude, I was walking in the neighborhood and somebody said, man, congratulations on all your success and this and that and that. And, I shared with him, like, man, thank you for encouragement. What's funny is, internally, we've really been walking through valleys, and but
Wow.
God's been kind to us, and he's been gracious. Um, I think it's, uh, I shared this after Glad You're Here was launched about how we were sitting at our dinner table right across from where I am here in my home office. And I apologized to the Hayes at one point. I was like, I'm so sorry that I'm so low right now.
Mm.
And Walker put his fork down and he looked me right in the eye and he said, it's okay, bro. We love you low. And man, it just hit me so
Wow.
hard. We love you low. And
Wow.
I think that's the Lord. He loves us in the highs and the lows. But man, this life is like a roller coaster. It's up and
Yeah.
down. It's sideways. It's left and right. You get nauseous at times, and
Wow.
and then
Yeah.
and then you take pics of these amazing views that you have, and
Man.
but it's all of it. It is all of it. You're not crazy if you feel sorrowful and rejoicing at the same time. You know,
Man.
how can you not be sorrowful in this world with all the
Wow.
pain,
Wow.
but also joyful with all the grace. So,
Yeah. 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 There seems to be some kind of sweet paradox that God allows and brings into our life simultaneously, that, like what you said, grace graciously keeps us humbled because he knows that just the success, so to speak, man, we would begin to believe our own press and very quickly become so egotistical. And so
yeah.
in his grace, he says, I'm, all right, Jacob, I'm going to bless you, but I'm going to break your hip.
You're
And
right.
you're going
That's
to walk
right.
with a limp, so that I get the glory, I get the credit, not you. And man,
Mm,
that's
mm.
amazing.
Hello, friends. My name is Amy Sylvester, and I am the Community Director here at Nothing is Wasted. It is our prayer that these stories of hope have been a gift in ministering to your heart this past year. I don't know what you're walking through, but I know whatever it is, hearing how God is showing up in the lives of other people gives us strength to continue to move forward in the healing in our own lives. We are grateful that we get to partner with God in this redemptive work He is doing through Nothing is Wasted, including sharing stories just like this one here on the podcast. And we want to invite you to do the same as this year comes to a close. If you've been blessed by the ministry of Nothing is Wasted, we'd love for you to consider partnering with us as we partner with God and making a donation before the end of this year. Nothing is Wasted is a nonprofit, and your gift and donation is tax deductible. Your donation will allow us to continue to create the many resources we offer, including the free resources like the podcast and specific curated pathways that guide you to hope and healing based on your pain story. We have other lifelines that we create for you, like master classes, and we do this because people partner with us in their donations. To give, simply go to nothingiswasted.com/donate, and you can partner with us in helping people take back their stories and move from pain to purpose. You help us help the mom who just lost a child, the marriage that needs healing, or the person who just got the diagnosis. Your gift helps us create the resource that they need to move from pain to purpose. Thank you for being part of the Nothing is Wasted community. We could not do what we do here without your support of this ministry. Thank you, friends.
That whole phrase that you just said, that Walker told you, that we love you low.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be a lot of the heart of Glad You're Here. Like,
Mm, yeah.
talk to me a little bit about what you guys are doing with this, and like, what's the mission of Glad You're Here? What is what's the message of this? What do you see as this thing is beginning to take shape?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so we really are affected by how the gospel transforms lives through the gift of friendship.
Mm,
And, we live in a world, I think, that is more connected than ever before, but it's also the loneliest that it's ever been. So there's a
yeah.
loneliness epidemic that's happening. And, I was reading a stat about how kids spending 70% less time with friends, and more on their screens. With the advent of social media, TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and X and you name it,
Yep.
it's easy to just scroll. So I see there's the world is more connected than ever before, but there's a world of difference between table connection and
Mm.
tablet connection.
Mm.
And table
Wow, so well
connection
put.
is on your screen, tablet connection is on your screen.
Right.
Table
Right.
connection is eye to eye,
Eye
heart
to
to
eye.
heart,
Wow.
soul to soul, person to person, one created in the image of God with another one created in the image of God, where you can be vulnerable and real and open up, and you're not trying to accept each other based on your achievements or your accolades or your performance, but it's really because you're breathing and you are a person created in the image of God, and you are accepted and you are loved, and it has nothing to do with
Wow.
your performance. And I love it, where you can just take all of the pressure off, and be in a place where Ray Orland talks about gospel, safety, and time,
Yep.
lots of gospel immersion, wave after wave after wave of good news for bad people through the finished work of Jesus Christ and the endless power of the Holy Spirit, constant immersion in that. And then safety, a safe environment, no accusing, no finger pointing, no blaming, no condescension, no looking down, no, none of that, but a safe place where people can unburden what's going on in their lives and be real. And then time, no no pressure, no self-imposed pressure, no external pressure, just a lot of time where you can take a deep breath, and we'll find then that in a place of grace we'll get going. It's
Mm.
it's it's really it's really remarkable. And so we have hanging in our coffee station area, it says, to all who are weary and need rest, to all who mourn and long for comfort, to all who've failed and desire strength, to all who've sinned and need a Savior, this home opens wider doors with a welcome from Jesus, the mighty
Wow.
friend of sinners. And we got that from uh, times when we were at Emmanuel, Nashville, Ray Ortland, where he would share that as a call to worship. I share that now at 12 Church as a call to worship. And that's what we need, is a lot of gospel,
Yeah.
safety, and time. And I think that happens not on our phones,
Yep.
And by the way, I mean, I'm all over Instagram. I'm all over,
Right.
Facebook. I do, and you do too. We all do. And
Right.
um it's but there's a huge difference between what we're doing right now, it's looking each other in the eye and talking, you know um and difference between talking and scrolling. And so
For sure.
yeah,
Wow.
I think the world needs to hear that. So we're trying
Yep.
to share that, with Glad You're Here, and
Yeah.
trying to encourage people to receive grace through the gift of friendship.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. It's so great. I mean,
yeah,
even the book, Glad You're Here, Two Unlikely Friends, Breaking Bread and Fences. I
yeah,
love that title, that byline, because, we have so much in this world that divides us. And
yeah, yeah,
fences is such a metaphor for that, right? When you pop up a fence, you want privacy, and so it just, you're walling yourself off from society. We were meant to be in a village. We were meant to be in community. We were not even meant to be privy to everybody else's village. And
Yeah.
so I feel like our entire, like, no wonder we're experiencing so much anxiety, so much
Mm-hmm.
depression, so much just epidemic of comparison, trying to keep up with
Yep.
everybody else throughout. And it's just spinning us in ways that our bodies were not designed to be spun. And so I love this call back to, hey, let's just get eye to eye friendship. It's amazing what the body does. We talk about a lot, the physical aspects of, you know, how physically it can contribute to the trauma that you've experienced in your life if you have adverse rhythms in your life. Whereas, if you put good, strong rhythms in your life, then it can contribute to healing. It fosters that healing and wholeness. And so even just the difference of like looking eye to eye with someone in attunement and
Yeah.
seeing someone else in empathy, right? What that does for each other,
Mm.
as opposed to, the science behind like even blue light screens and different things like that. You're going, okay, the writing's on the wall here. We're seeing everywhere, not just in Christian gospel centered circles, but across the board. Scientists, secular circles are going, this isn't healthy for society. Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and yet we can't like throw it all out at the same time because it is a technology advancement that is a tool, but it needs to be curtailed in such a way. We have to be very conscientious of that to go, all right,
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm.
can't, all this stuff can't replace the God given design for us to be connected life on life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, so much, so much wisdom there. And I thankfully the Lord's given us voices that are helping us in this. Like I think of John Mark Comer
Yeah. Yeah.
in his prophetic voice for this day, this age, and this issue. It's really really helpful. The ruthless elimination of hurry and practicing the way, all of that. I've we've got to be able to put the phone down, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so that we can go eye to eye, heart to heart, soul to soul, person to person with the
Mm.
people that the Lord has put in our lives. And I think the physical effects of that happen.
Yeah.
You will, it's healthy. It's really healthy for us to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Man,
mm,
so good. Craig, this has been incredible. I mean, your story and just the way that God is using you and what he's taught you. I just love you called it something I've never really heard of. I think you said like the silent years. There were these silent years that God was
mm,
stirring so much in you to equip you for this next season. And just thank you for reminding us that brokenness often is paired with blessing and vice versa. The blessing in our life is paired with brokenness, and that God's in all of it. And you're living testimony
yes.
to that. And it's so cool to see just what God is, the message of friendship, community, hospitality, all that's coming out of your life right now. Um, and it's not something that, what I love about it, I call it like sponge seasons of life, that what comes out of you when life squeezes you is what was already in you. You can tell
Yeah.
this was in you
That's
before
so
any of this,
good.
right? Like
Mm,
before a microphone was put in front of you, before you're like telling the
mm,
world, or you wrote a book with Walk, before any of that, that's what was in you. And that's how God wired you and what you wrestled through. And I love that about now God's elevating this message for a time such as this. It's such an important and such a timely message. So
mm.
we'll make sure that we put a link here on the show notes. If you're listening to this, we'll put it right under the YouTube video. If you're watching this, glad you're here. Two unlikely friends breaking bread and fences. And Craig actually has a new book that you have written called Overflowing Mercies, 100
Yeah.
Meditations on the Tender Heart of God.
Mm.
And so this is a wonderful book to pick up as well. We'll put a link right there where you can grab that. But man, Craig, thanks so much for spending time with us. This has been such a
Thank you.
blessing to me and our community.
Thank you for having me. Huge blessing for me as well. And I'm just so grateful. We need to hang when you get to Nashville. So
Yes, we need to get eye to eye off the
yeah,
screen
there you go. And by the
this
way,
summer when we're down in Nashville. We're going to make it happen. We'll figure it out.
for anybody listening, Davey and I are wearing the exact same thing, a black shirt, and it's awesome. So yeah, I can't
Uh,
wait. I can't wait to hang. That'll be great.
that's awesome,
Yeah.
man. Well, let's do it. Thanks so much for spending time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of the Nothing is Wasted podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and found it as encouraging and insightful as we did. Now, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen, and leave us a rating and review. Your feedback helps us to connect to those who need these stories of hope and healing most, and to reach more listeners just like you. Also, subscribe to our Nothing is Wasted Ministries YouTube channel. Now be sure to stay connected with us on social media. You can follow us at Nothing is Wasted Ministries, follow me at Davey Blackburn, and follow Aubrey at ObSam. We'd love to interact with you, so be sure to stop by and let us know how these conversations are impacting you and your story. And if you want to learn more about all the incredible resources we have available to help you navigate whatever valley you're walking through, visit our website at nothingiswasted.com. If you're ready to get started in your journey towards healing and finding purpose in your pain, we'd love to help. Simply go to nothingiswasted.com/start here for your next step. Lastly, a big thank you to Sleeping at Last for providing all the music for the Nothing is Wasted podcast. We want to thank our guests, and we want to thank you, our Nothing is Wasted community, for tuning in regularly. Remember, no matter what challenges you face, whatever pain you are walking through, nothing is wasted. We'll see you next time for another incredible conversation here on the Nothing is Wasted podcast. But before you go, check out this short clip from our next episode. Thanks for joining us, friends.
So good. We say, in fact, you can see it on our landing page for coaching, nothingiswasted.com, nothingiswasted.com/coaching. We say this: you can't repurpose what you don't process. You can't process what you don't own. You can't own what you won't name, and you can't name what you can't see.
So true.
And there are so many things that we just can't see for a lot of different reasons. I have my own way that I see the world just by my propensity, the way God wired me, right? He wired me a particular demeanor and a particular persuasion, right? And we all need those different perspectives, of course. But then I also have the ruptures that have taken place in my story that has caused some of that even to get more skewed. And I need someone else outside of me who's not in the thick of it, who's not emotionally wrapped up in it, going, hey, I love you, but here's where you're seeing it wrong.